Good evening. I'll reopen the June 13th, 2018 public meeting. Yes. The microphone, please. Sure. Thank you, Matt. Before we get going, we'll do confirmation of agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda, Council? I see no one. Administration? There's nothing. Can I get a motion to confirm the agenda?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Constable Montgomery. All in favor?
Once a cup.
Counts. Once a cup, always a cup. All in favor? So we'll go from here into our only delegation, which is the 420 Advisory Management. I know the gentlemen are here, and I'll invite them up. Just prior to, I have reached out to the 420 Advisory Management people, and we've agreed that based on the complexity of the topic at hand, which is the new cannabis legislation, they should probably be entitled to more than the normal 10-minute time period. So I would entertain a motion from council to extend that period of time. Councillor Bauer.
I move to extend the 420 Advisory Management's presentation to 30 minutes.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. I'd call up the 420 Advisory Management people. Please come on up and introduce yourself, and we'll give you the floor.
Well, thank you for having us today. My name is Jeff Moy. I'm the CEO and president of 420 Investments. We're operating within this atmosphere already, opening a clinic in Calgary we have had for 4 years. We also have a clinic in Lethbridge, and that's dedicated clinics to medical patients, real legitimate medical patients. With us here tonight is Dan Rowland. He's the ex-director of public affairs for the city of Denver, and he's got a great insight into their experience in legalization. I'll let Dan take over here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us here this evening, and thanks for extending our time. So this is a topic that we could spend all night on, but we'll cruise through some of these slides to try to provide a bit of an overview of legalization, some of the basics and some of the fundamentals, and also what I've seen, my personal experience from Colorado and the States, and a bit of a case study. So this is probably something that maybe doesn't need to be dived into too deeply here, but did want to just sort of focus on the fundamentals here when we're speaking about this. I think language is really important, and we're talking about cannabis and cannabis consumption. We're talking about a spectrum of strains from indica to sativa that affect people differently. We all have an endocannabinoid system full of receptors, and they respond differently. Each human being's makeup is a little bit different, and our reactions, our responses to the cannabinoids found in the cannabis plant are all going to be different. But generally speaking, along the spectrum goes from relaxing to energizing. So oftentimes in the clinic where our doctor, Ife Abiola, works with patients that are registered to get cannabis from the medical system here in Canada, he'll be working with them, consulting with them on their different needs from the cannabis plant, some of which some people have no interest in being intoxicated. All of this stuff is psychoactive, but only the THC-based products are intoxicating. But for people with, perhaps really bad nerve pain and things like that, THC-based products are going to be the things that address some of those issues. So again, very high-level stuff here, but the way it's commonly consumed through smoking, oils, and vaporizing of either flower products or oil-based products. To give you an idea of how this breaks down in Colorado, I just showed, this is based on dollars, what the breakdown is. So you can see that, smokable flower product is still the market leader, still the preferred choice. But these other products have really gained a lot of market share over the past few years. And I think it's important to show that there's a broad spectrum of products, again, in both THC-based and CBD-based products. So,
I think it's important also to keep in mind what we're actually legalizing in Canada and what will be available in the future. So at first, the only things will just be the first two categories, the flower and the concentrates. Edibles and non-edible infused products won't be coming till after.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even in the concentrate category, it's going to be very, very limited to begin with. So probably something I know you all have discussed in these chambers already before, but the Alberta Framework High Level for Cannabis Retail is going to allow for municipalities to layer in more restrictive regulations than what they've sort of outlined as the baseline here. But I think it's worth revisiting that this is sort of the framework that we're all looking at and making choices from community to community that make sense for the people that live in these towns, whether or not they want to shorten the hours of operation, provide additional setbacks from schools, all of those normal sort of time, place, and manner issues that we would expect to discuss. So obviously, we're seeing a wide range of that from community to community across Alberta and other provinces. So to the extent that there's lessons learned, I think the province did a very good job of doing their homework and consulting with states that had already done this and adopted some of these similar provisions. So I'll let Jeff sort of describe the retail side of what this will look like for 420.
Yeah, I guess for the 420 itself, we're looking at, I'm going to move over because I'm really not that short. Be a leading cannabis retailer in the province of Alberta is obviously our goal for the 420 premium market, which is a different company, all involved in our space of companies. We really believe that the retail experience is probably the most important part of this, and it's where all the education is happening. The difference between, I would hope, our staff within our premium dispensary and the ones that are simply at most dispensaries will be the level of training provided. AGLC has provided a very fundamental base for testing before you can register as a person to work within this industry. But in there leaves a lot of gap with regards to education on the products, education on the strains, education on the effects within the person, understanding the tolerance of people walking in. And edibles creates this entire new issues for all municipalities, honestly. If the education base isn't there, if it isn't required by your town, I know the city of Calgary, I know that Okotoks, Lethbridge are all entertaining putting a small brochure in every single bag to educate. And that was something we were going to design with them to make sure that it hits every retail bag going out. I think that's important because in the future when it comes to edibles, that's when we're going to have our biggest strain on your infrastructure, the biggest strain on EMS, police, the hospital strains, that kind of stuff, with regards to the fact that people don't understand the tolerance levels with edibles as much as they do with smoking. It's a whole different world. It's a bigger commitment. You could be impaired from 6 to 8 hours, which is a commitment. When you're using flower, you can have that impairment part be over within 2 hours. So there's a big difference between the two. Also, it's called first pass metabolism, but the liver gets the first cut on everything that we consume. And it does have the ability to change the delta 9 into delta 11, which could actually change the potency from 2 to 22 times stronger. So even a seasoned user could use an edible at one point in time, depending on their makeup that day. It could be 2 to 22 times stronger, which again is a big commitment to make. It also, this is where the strain comes for the municipalities with regards to the fact that people feel like they're going to die. They're greening out is what they call it. They throw up a lot. They're not in any actual danger of dying, but they're going to feel like it. And the education piece is the most important part of this. We've seen it in Colorado, we've seen it in Vegas, we've seen it anywhere else this is legalized. If we're not educating the consumer, the first thing they do is walk in and ask for what's the highest THC you got. They just want a straight up brain grenade. And I think it's important, the education piece, and I think it's important that not only the town of Strathmore, but I'll be pushing this with Barry Machito on Friday, but it's extremely important that we make sure that this happens in this province. That's our focus here in Alberta. So I'll let Dan continue.
Yeah, I think you touched on our engagement model, and this is something that's happening at all levels of government. I would say the provincial work started about a year and a half ago, if not before that. Jeff was actually on stage with Minister Ganley when they announced the framework. That's, I think, goes to show how much due diligence they did and how much work we did to sort of help prepare this. And so at all levels, we're doing this exact thing, coming before council, trying to engage the community, being available, frankly, for people that have questions about what this looks like. That goes beyond tonight, obviously. We're here to be a resource for you all going forward. So we will continue doing this work long after implementation takes off. It's become quite a cliche. I've heard it many times, but legalization truly isn't an event. It's a process, as Trudeau has said a couple of times. And that is true. In Colorado, for example, we see more bills introduced in the legislature each year that have a cannabis, bent to it than were the year prior. So it's like anything else; it keeps evolving and changing. So I will dive into a quick little bit of what I bring here. So obviously the U.S. is still very much a patchwork of legalization. From state to state, it varies, and you can see that we're still fully illegal in 17 of the states, plus those 4 dark gray ones, the 4 dark ones that have just only decriminalized small amounts. The blue ones, that's where full adult use markets have been legalized, as well as the possession, home growing, and then existing medical laws there as well. I point out Vermont because they very recently became the 9th state to have a legal recreational market. However, they have no commercial system yet for it in place. So they're a little bit like Washington, D.C. in that it's legal to possess adult use marijuana there, but you don't have stores, dispensaries, things like that. So what we've seen over the last few decades is a steady increase in Americans supporting legalization. I think it's 61% of Americans that now support this, and obviously that increase is being driven by education by younger voters, coming of age. And, I think this is something that we'll see continue to trend upward as access to cannabis is increased across the U.S., as more states come online and figure out their regulatory structures for this. So let's take a look at where I'm from, Denver, Colorado. Obviously, a little bit bigger of an industry footprint in Denver than we're going to see in Strathmore, but it's worth taking a look at. So Denver basically said we are open for business. Much like other places that have legalized in Colorado, it's an opt-in situation for municipalities and local governments. They don't. No one was required to participate in this industry, but we did, obviously, as the hub of the state and where a lot of the commercial real estate that would support this was going to be. So that has led to quite a footprint, over 1,100 businesses operating out of close to 500 now unique locations. And you get that because a lot of these are co-located businesses. So we're talking about all of the types of businesses, the growing of it, the selling of it, the manufacturing of the edibles and the infused products, and then also the testing facilities for this. And this would probably look familiar to many of you. It's a fairly typical business licensing process. Starts at the zoning level, right? Are you allowed to operate in the parcel of land that you want to do it? Building permits if there's going to be any kind of build out. Most of the setbacks and proximity restrictions in Denver actually reside in the licensing code. It's not something that's necessarily in the zoning code. So it's a bit of something I guess I would flag for everyone to be aware of, that you've got applicants that get zone use permits that still may not actually get a license because they haven't done their diligence on the proximities and things like that. So upon a conditional approval of the business license, there's a public hearing process for stores, not for the other business types. And then there is a very, I guess I would say, inclusive inspection process. That includes multiple city agencies. And one of the things that we're really proud of in Denver is that we built a way for all the inspecting agencies to communicate about this. And this is, in my mind, one of the benefits to a public agency of legalization, is that it gave us it gave us the ability, but also the need to create new technologies and new processes within our government, so that we were breaking down silos between agencies. And now, if the environmental health inspector is going out, she can pull up her inspection chart and see the last time the fire department was there, see the last time zoning was there, what they saw, who they talked to, and the notes from that. So that's just an aside, but I wanted to show you what the licensing process looks like, as obviously it's going to be similar in a lot of local governments here in Alberta. So what does this look like in terms of dollars? You've seen year-over-year revenue growth. This is something that is really created by access. There is so much latent demand for cannabis that when you open a new store, it immediately absorbs some of that latent demand. So we had a ramp-up period in Colorado for the first several years, ramping up to about 500 recreational marijuana stores. Colorado is 5.5 million people, so I think it's a good comparison for Alberta in a lot of ways, both just culturally and geographically. There's a lot of similarities. So, and in Denver, obviously, we drove that. We had a big piece of that pie. It's been interesting to see as other communities, as I mentioned, have opted in now in the intervening years. Denver's sort of share of the overall market is actually decreasing. I think we were at above 40% the first couple of years, and it's down in the 30s now, which is fine. And the total number of sales has increased year over year to just a little bit over $1.5 billion last year, and that includes recreational and medical. I think this year we might see the top. I think we might plateau. There's already some indicators showing that. The medical marijuana sales, which you can see started decreasing last year, are decreasing at an even faster clip this year. I think part of that is due to just the prevalence now of recreational being available to people. But also, I think our market is finally supplying its demand.
I think we'll see a similar trend here in Canada with regards to our medical system. It really will depend on what the federal government does with DIN numbers for the product. If that comes out, it changes the game. There are some insurance companies, Sun Life being one of them, that are opted fully in already. There are several insurance companies at this point in time that opt in depending on your condition. So I think if we continue to see the trend where the insurance companies are covering it, we might see an uptake in the medical more than a decrease, but at this point in time, we're really not sure. I know we're feeling it right now in the clinic itself, and I figured this would happen, but a decline in the patients coming as we get closer and closer to retail, and less doctors willing to write prescriptions if it's easier for you to just go across the street and get it.
So I won't spend too much time here because obviously it's not a great comparison, but Denver's cannabis-related revenue last year was $43 million, and those are the different sources that it comes from. Obviously, we had the ability to levy our own local sales tax, which is something we can talk a little bit more about because municipalities need resources for this. That is an incredibly important conversation to have, and when we are debating the flow of dollars in Canada from federal government to province to locals need it, and they need a voice in that discussion, and they need to show what the resource attention it's going to take. So I wanted to point out sort of the different revenue streams that exist in Denver. Because when we start budgeting, that's where you can really start to make some difficult decisions. In 2016, we did a full both analysis of the direct budgeted costs, but also some of the indirect costs. And this was done by essentially interviewing staff, shadowing staff, understanding how much time and effort people were spending on cannabis-related issues, even if it was only 10% of their normal job duties or something like that to quantify it. And what we found was that there was a significant indirect cost that wasn't accounted for in our budget process. So $16 million is really the true cost of regulation for a city like Denver, which is 12,000 full-time employees. So again, not the best comparison, but just pointing out that it takes resources. It cuts across all levels of government. There are 13 different city agencies that work on this in one way or another. And having a central point of contact in the city that can sort of help manage that, bring people to the table was really helpful. We took a lot of we took a lot of pride in the fact that we had cops and firefighters coming to the table to work with us on some of these issues. And, they were texting each other when they would see an issue with a grow facility or something like that. And, I remember our commander that I worked with closely on the Denver Police Department saying, I never texted a firefighter before this. That just didn't happen. We were two completely separate worlds. So I think that's important because there's a lot of moving pieces to this and a lot of coordination is necessary. And just literally bringing people around a table to talk through some of the issues really, really helps. So because you have impacts. And I want to point out that in the States, because of our patchwork legalization, there is still an incredible black market demand for cannabis. Now, when we talk about black market, there's a couple different things to look at. There's the local sort of your everyday user or infrequent user who likes his cannabis one way or the other and is going to get it. Those people will be absorbed as access is provided. As recreational marijuana stores that are regulated and well-run and safe and are selling regulated product come online, those folks get absorbed. We had about a 40-60 split in year one of sales. This was 2014, where only 40% of regular cannabis users were getting it from the regulated market. That has increased about 15% of the market each year, up to the point where we're at about 90%. And I think that's, again, probably where that plateaus because some people are just going to continue doing it the way they want. But that only solves your issues within the in the borders of your jurisdiction. Unfortunately, Denver grown marijuana is maybe $1,500 a pound, $2,000 a pound in Colorado. In Chicago, in New York, in Miami, it's $6,000 a pound. So we have people who are unfortunately incentivized to come to Denver, set up shop, grow it, and then ship it out of state. And that's when we get issues that arise around these collective grows. Obviously, the fire department hates these things. You can just see the electrical wires hanging out. This is just not something that we were prepared for necessarily. Having people literally coming to hide in plain sight in between two licensed facilities and growing in an unlicensed way, sending the product out of state. This challenge still exists today. Although some of the regulatory moves we took in zoning to get rid of these larger grow houses were successful, but they have forced some of it back into the home growing situation where people are doing it on a little bit smaller scale in residential settings. Speaking of residential settings, hash oil extractions, this is something that happens when people are using liquefied petroleum gases to extract hash oil, but don't really know what they're doing. Again, a huge education, both for us in the fire department, police, but also for consumers and people that were given the right to do this by our state constitution, but really had no idea what they were doing and might have had not the best intentions in terms of what they were going to do with the end product. So this was something that was, again, addressed through legislation ran by our fire department to cut down on people's ability to use LPG to do extractions in the home outside of licensed facilities. And then this is the sort of smaller, I would say, not to minimize it, but the localized black market issues that, thankfully we've been able to mostly control as access has been provided. But I want to put this stuff in perspective. I don't want to minimize that crime because it is a true public health and safety issue. And something, especially in a dense urban environment, that we worry about. But as you can see, cannabis-related crime is a very small percentage overall. And just so you know, this is sort of defined as our police data people going through each and every violation in the city of Denver and drawing if there was a clear connection to cannabis in it. So it's a small percentage, less than half of 1%, and crimes that are directly related to the industry, meaning a store was robbed or someone involved in the industry committed a crime, was an even smaller subset of that percentage. So 269 crimes in 2016. That's more than we had before legalization, so it is a resource drain, but it's also not something where the police have had to completely change what they do. And of course, driving under the influence also a very big concern. I think the key here is education and training, helping folks understand how to recognize the signs of impairment. A simple blood test, a blood test, or even an oral test that Health Canada and the RCMP is working on is not necessarily going to stand up in court. Proving impairment for cannabis is much different than proving impairment for alcohol. I show these numbers again to show that, first of all, our overall DUI numbers are going down. And I think that's a trend that's really happening across the U.S. And I attribute a lot of that to really strict laws on it, really good enforcement of those laws, and now 3 decades of really good education about about the dangers of driving drunk. And it's unfortunately going to take many years of really good education on the dangers of driving high to make that point become sort of part of the normal social consciousness around cannabis. But just so you know, these are a subset. So the number of DUI total, some of those were drug involved, and a subset of that were just cannabis. So I think what this brings us to is a need for education. Sort of, that's a very general statement. I understand that. But there is no one avenue of life or government that doesn't need education around cannabis right now. So even if it's just figuring out what the laws are and how they apply to people once legislation is passed, talking about the health impacts, talking about responsible use, safe storage practices, keeping it away from children, how to talk to your children about this newly legal substance. All of these things are really, really important. There are resources available, although they can be hard to find at times, but engaging with the provincial government on this stuff, engaging with individuals like ourselves who have experience in this, I think is really important to help sort of sift through the clutter, if you will. There's a lot of noise out there around cannabis right now, but there are tried and true methods and resources available, especially for parents. I think that's one that perhaps gets overlooked sometimes, but is really important because this is a conversation that parents need to have with their kids. And I think Canada hitting the pause button on edibles is probably a wise move, but that doesn't mean they're not coming. That doesn't mean they're not going to be very popular. They're discreet, they're portable. People will start taking them and start taking them irresponsibly. The more education now, the better. This was an actual billboard, and I find it funny because the woman, she's a redhead, Maureen Dowd, who's a columnist with the New York Times, came to Denver right after legalization and decided to pop a 100 milligram chocolate bar.
Oh.
She had a rough time. She wrote about it in the Sunday Times, and my city was a laughing stock. I took that personally then. Obviously, I haven't gotten over it. But the point is that without that education to the consumer, you run into problems. And that is something that I think we let get ahead of us. And so I'm glad that Canada has pushed the pause button on that. But that doesn't mean that it's just going to solve the problem. The education is still necessary. And the last thing I'll leave us with something to think about on social consumption. And this is something that no one has figured out, frankly.
There's no right answer.
There is no right answer. That's a great way to put it. Once you start to unpack the issues about where and who and how much and how many, it gets very difficult. So our struggling experiment in Denver right now is to permit social use lounges, but there's no revenue model for businesses. So we have one pending application that is going to be a bit of like an arcade video game style thing. I think they have a pretty solid plan, but the point here is that cannabis consumption is happening anyway, and people will do it in a social setting. So figuring out a way to permit that in a safe, responsible manner is key, because otherwise we're left with a law that we can't enforce. And I think that puts us in a tough position when we're trying to be responsible to our community members and keep everyone safe, especially when it comes to special events and things like that. I think there's going to be some interesting models that come out here in Alberta. The city of Calgary is already looking at special events and ways to permit that. So this is a good conversation to have with the community, with law enforcement and public health officials.
I think one of the big impacts of Denver being pretty tight on social consumption for smoking really drove the bus on more people trying the edibles than necessary, which again, without the education, really did increase their issues. The social consumption answer, there is no right answer. I mean, we can argue about this all weekend, but the future of this product is going to change so drastically, so quickly that anything you do today really won't be relevant in 2-3 years from now. The introduction of the vape pens, and we're not talking about the e-cigarettes, but the vape pens for edible cannabis is a completely different world. Anyone in this room could be using it right now. Leaves no cloud of smoke. Tastes and smells like strawberries. It doesn't matter what you write for that. So, if you have an issue with social consumption in general, it was one of the things that I pushed for this government here in Alberta, that we should allow social consumption for a number of reasons, and more to do with what was coming, not what we're dealing with today. Because edibles will be coming faster than we expect. And we need to be prepared for that. And we're honestly not doing any education at this point in time. You know, the provincial and federal government keep talking about it, but have you guys seen it yet? No one else has either. And edibles will do that.
Yeah, it quickly becomes one of those issues that they look at and say,
Damn.
next year we've got our hands full. We've got to get licensing down. We've got to get stores open. We've got to get grow facilities regulated. We'll deal with this next year, and that's problematic in my view. So, just something to think about. And of course, we'd take any questions you all have. Or.
Thank you. Very informative. So I'll open it up to any questions from council? Councillor Montgomery.
So I guess my question would be, do you think a lot of the issues that Colorado faced with just kind of the patchwork of legalization will probably avoid that because Canada will be legal right across the board?
That's a great hypothesis. I think that's what a lot of people expect because and I assume you mean the issues with the diversion of product to the black market.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we are incentivized right now, or not we, but people are incentivized to do that. There's too much money to be made out of state. So as long as we have sort of limited access in places that have, millions of consumers, they're going to get it from somewhere. They've been getting it from California for decades. Colorado became a little bit of a hot spot after we legalized for it. So yes, I would like to think we'll see where it goes, but Colorado's completely surrounded by states that are illegal. So I would like to think that some of those issues will be alleviated by providing legalization in other places.
We've seen different strains here, again, with our own patchwork here in Canada, and different provinces allowing certain things. The Victoria City Council is my favorite. Someone got up and said, I like edibles. Okay, edibles are legal. But they're not. And some of the reasons and issues we had here in Canada were that this illegal dispensaries operating in Ontario and BC were getting robbed, and robbed on a fairly regular basis. And they weren't reporting it. And the reason they're not reporting it is because police come in and basically rob them again, take the rest of their stuff. So it was not getting reported. So we had a lot of issues with crime related to the black market, related to illegal dispensaries operating in this country when it's federally illegal. I think come legalization, we won't see the same issues that you're seeing down in states, obviously being federally legal. We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to be one of the first countries to do this. It's really giving an upper hand to our Canadian companies to compete on a world market right now before the big bad US get involved and Donald Trump winning another term and legalizing this, because I honestly, it's going to happen. He doesn't want to get reelected, but it's going to happen, and I believe they're going to change the tide of that, and that'll be a big difference for Canada. So early first movers for Canada, it's a great thing. I think a lot of the issues you're talking about, we won't see.
My other question would be, as a municipality, should we be viewing marijuana as similar to tobacco or alcohol, or neither?
Neither. It is a different substance. It's consumed differently. Again, in the context of social use, I think the provincial baseline of allowing it where tobacco is allowed makes a lot of sense. But the difference is people don't necessarily want to be exposed to it all the time. And people, good, bad, or indifferent, are not comfortable with seeing it at the playground in the city park yet. That, I think, is going to take a lot of time before we're ready to do that. And so I always advise, to start fairly strict with it, and you can sort of unroll things slowly as time goes on. It's a lot harder to go the other way. But you can't treat it like alcohol either, because we provide places for people to use alcohol socially. So you can't use it in the park, but you can go to the tavern, or you can find a permitted place to do it. So I think it's really important to at least look at the special event settings, places where we can provide safe access and in somewhat of a controlled environment, and then figure out, again, with your community, what makes sense for them in terms of how it looks and how it smells.
We will not have regulated cannabis, what'd you say, lounges? Here in Alberta either. that will make any sense whatsoever. They are not allowed to sell the product in there, so again, there's really not much of a revenue stream there, so I think we're eventually gonna allow lounges, I just don't see a lot of them.
I think so, yeah.
Being born.
Thank you.
Do you have one more? Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. My one comment actually would be, I know that edibles aren't legal yet. I think that they will be coming, and I think you can actually treat them separately. You can treat edibles different than you can treat, say, smoking or vaping or whatever else. And I was just actually kind of wondering if you would suggest that.
Well, yeah, and again, I hate to just harp on Colorado, but I think there's so many good examples there. It's illegal to smoke anything indoors in the state, so you sort of have that natural separation where you can allow edibles to be used in any kind of lounge setting. But an edible is, I would argue, a much less social consumption activity than passing around a joint, for instance. But that is not really what I think the people that push for social consumption care about. They just want to be able to be in an environment where they can hang out with their friends. Personal private use has kept people in their own homes, or in the case of folks that are visiting or in a hotel or maybe live in an apartment building that doesn't allow it. They've had to break the law, and they don't like breaking the law. They don't like the fact that they have to go outside in the alley to smoke a joint. They just want a place to go. So I think giving them the lounge access, even though the actual eating of the edible is going to take 5 seconds, it's an important step to recognize that people want to do this socially. But yeah, you can absolutely treat it differently. And again, it just layers in more complexity for the business, which is why we've had, I think, kind of a rough start with it, because the smoking part can be allowed, but it has to be outside, but it also has to be outside of public view. So we're talking a screened in rooftop, we're talking a back porch, we're not talking about the sidewalk patio. So there's just some sort of natural constraints built into the law there.
Thank you. I have a very quick question, and we're obviously a municipality with lots of employees, and it brings into question the fit for work policy that will be forthcoming, I would imagine. Any comment in regards to how Denver or other municipalities in Colorado dealt with that issue?
Yeah, and it's not an apples to apples comparison because of the difference in the law. But so from a policy standpoint, the city of Denver doesn't really drug test. Obviously, if you're driving a snowplow, that's different. But the vast majority of employers are not going to be subject to drug testing as a condition of employment. And the stance has always been, we don't care if you go have a beer after work. We certainly don't care if you go consume cannabis after work. You can't be impaired at work regardless of the substance. Now, the state of Colorado did uphold the employer's right to terminate employment based on a negative or positive drug test for cannabis, including people that have a medical prescription. So the law there is still quite strict, and that was upheld by our state Supreme Court. So I do see that changing and actually becoming a little bit more. That's an area where we're actually going to be looking to Canada for guidance on how to make that work. Because obviously a lot of in the medical community feel it's a bit too punitive right now. So I think the point is having that really good policy put in place for employees and having open and frank discussions with them about cannabis, and then training your trainers to make sure that information gets passed down, and helping, again, people understand the signs of impairment with cannabis. This is not just, you can't do like what the province did with cell-safe training for employees who are working in the stores. I mean, they basically took the liquor store model and did a find and replace for cannabis and said, here's your training. That's not going to work in this instance.
I appreciate your comparison. However, having a couple of beer after work, next morning at 9 o'clock, there's no beer in your system. That's not necessarily the case for cannabis.
No, it's not, but you're also not impaired. That's the biggest issue we have in Sprouts. So you could consume the night before, the next day you're going to test positive, the next week you might test positive. You're not impaired. That is our biggest problem in Canada with regards to roadside, with work safety. There is no system that can measure actual level of THC and impairment in the same line. It's never going to happen. So, you know, I think it's the lawyer from SUMA said it best when he said, this is a great time to hit refresh for everybody. Not just municipalities, but organizations. Take a look at your drug policies. If your municipal act says municipal act in 1984, time to change it, time to take a look at things. I think they have more of an issue with that in Saskatchewan. But it's a time for us to all take a look at it. I mean, everybody's going to have to refresh their drug policy, or at least address it and look at it. And then every employee is going to have to look at it, and it'll be mandatory, and it is mandatory for most drug policies, that if you have a prescription for anything, you have to notify your employer of. And I know that if that is done within Canada, they're safe as an employee working within your facility, as long as they're not a safety in the area. And who evaluates that, I don't know at this point in time.
Okay. Have fun with that, James. I think that's all we have. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for attending and providing the valuable information. And we've taken down your email address. Don't be surprised if you get a few emails from councillors with some.
If I may, Your Worship, could you call for, if you have a proposed motion, would you like to call for somebody to make the motion rather than you making the motion? That would be in order, is because you are in the
I
chair.
think a chair can make a motion, actually, but I
You
wouldn't.
can.
I wouldn't have a
but
problem.
But you, I'm
Would
not
you?
saying you can't, but it would be appropriate if
Sure.
you did.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I will call for somebody to make a motion.
I move that administration make appropriate inquiries with Alberta Health Services and invite a representative knowledgeable in the area of cannabis use to the July Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Any comments, any questions? All in favor? So if administration could see to that, that would be great. Thank you. And now we'll move on to, I'll take a motion to go into committee of the whole. Councillor Corbeil?
So move.
Thank you. All in favor? And we have minutes of the May 9th Committee of the Whole meeting. Are there any comments, questions in regards to those minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve them. Councillor Cox. All in favor? Those minutes are approved. And we'll move into items from administration. 6.1, Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center. Tracy, you're at the mic, and I assume you're to talk on this. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just here to give you an update on some of the pieces as we move closer to opening the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Centre. We're within about 14 weeks of opening, and so we're getting down to a lot of little details. So I'm going to go through a slideshow to show you some photos. I think you've seen them already before, but we'll talk about a few key things. As of June 5th, construction has hit a 70% completion. As we move into more of the finishings and final parts of the project. One of the last big things to happen is throughout July, we'll see the solar panels being installed on top of the roof, so will be a lot of outside activity, but besides that, everything else is inside the building now. We're still aiming for a opening for school starting in September 4th. And we're looking at options for partial occupancy if we don't have the full facility completed. So we're working well with our construction partners as well as our school partners at Golden Hills to make that possible. By the end of June, the facility will be completely enclosed. In fact, if you drive up there now, you'll see a lot of the windows have been installed, and permanent power will be connected to the building by the end of the month. Fixtures, including flooring and furniture, will start to roll in July and August, starting with the second floor of the school, into this main floor of the school, and into the field house. So there'll be lots of action inside the facility moving forward. And just a reminder that council's been invited to a construction tour next Wednesday, June 20th at 4 p.m. on site. We'll be doing that. We'll be meeting here before we go, and we'll get all of our appropriate equipment on. We've also invited the county councillors and our sponsors and some Friends from the Press to site tours on the Thursday, June 21st. So everyone will get on site next week if they so choose. Just go through a couple photos. As I was looking through them today, I realized a lot of them are already outdated because other things happened. But some pictures here show you what the exterior work is going to look like on the site. You'll start to see more of the paneling and color coming in the next few weeks.
Paneling just going on the school, or is it going on the field house as well?
Just on the school, the walls of the field house were precast walls, and so they will be stained closer to the end of the project, but those are the material. So we've tried to incorporate some rendering drawings to show you what the final product will look like. So this will be the entrance to the school with the canopy. The tall tower there is the elevator, which is delivered on site this week and should be up and running shortly, which will be good for hauling things up and down. So this is the mechanical room, always really exciting. So they're hoping to have the mechanical system online by mid-June so they can start balancing the spaces. They're putting in T-bar over the next couple weeks. So once that's in place in the school, they can start balancing the air throughout the summers before they open. This is a view from our Sobeys indoor walking track, looking down on what will be the school gymnasium area.
Tracy, I was asked how long or how many meters the track is. Do you know that information?
Such a
offhand?
good question, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's 5 lanes. Yeah. Do you know? Yeah. Is it
200 meters around? Thank you.
That was what I was gonna look up. Whether it's the inside lane or the outside lane, I don't know either.
Hopefully the inside.
Yeah.
This is looking towards again the school gymnasium down on the main floor. So these are the millwork that's gone in for the washrooms and change rooms that are inside the field house. So this will be where the main public washrooms and washrooms for the kids are, as well as to the right-hand side of the photo is change rooms. And hallways of the school, which is where a lot of the work has been focused. And the main entrance. And then this is just a reminder of our color palette that we're using in the facility. And we'll have some samples on site next week that you can see some of the textures and colors that we're using to create a really fun environment for the school and the community. So we have a couple updates on what we're doing, getting ready to open and some of the operational things that we're doing. We've posted for our first full-time sports center employee. We posted last week for the facility programmer. This position will be responsible for scheduling all our user groups and working really closely with the school to facilitate access to each other's spaces. We're hoping to have this person in place starting mid-July, and they'll help start building our facility policies and procedures, helping us start building our scheduling framework so we can have a schedule in place for the day we open with our user groups. So that person will be working out of the FCSS office until occupancy in September. So we're going to be very full in our space. Yeah. This week we had a kickoff meeting with a new software company called Perfect Mind. This software is going to be our scheduling software as well as our program registration software. We're going to start by rolling it out for the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center, and then eventually it'll roll into all our facilities. And what's really great about this software is residents will have a one-stop shop for all services provided through community services at the town. You can have one family account. You can register your kids for swimming. You can register them for youth club programs, as well as anything else we start offering at other facilities. So it's going to be a lot more convenient for our residents. A couple other things that we're working on is we're looking to bring forward some information to council in July around some membership models that we can start considering, not just for the Strathmore Products Sports Center, but also like a Strathmore-wide rec pass. We're waiting on some data from the community survey that we did, as well as we got some research data from the HEO Coalition that did some community engagement that yielded some really good results. So we're bringing that forward to council with some fee recommendations and some programming ideas to help facilitate access for all of our residents. And finally, just a quick sponsorship update. We are still actively pursuing sponsors. We have 3 community partners at a contract stage, and as soon as they are signed, we'll be looking forward to sharing
Excellent.
that with council and the public, as well as our partners at the school and the county. We are working with Triam Designs here in town to work on some signage options, and we'll be working closely with all of our sponsors to ensure they're happy with signage design, placement, and colors in the facility. So that's what we are working on, and we're open to any questions.
Great, thank you. I think you were up first. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess one question I have has to do with the solar panels. And I don't expect you to know this right now, but if you could find out, I'm just wondering, I guess, what the economics were of buying or like putting the solar panels up.
Yeah, I can actually answer that.
Oh, okay.
So the school division got a grant from the province,
Yeah.
and it's been fully funded by that grant.
Yeah.
The town's not contributed. The town and the county haven't contributed any money to the solar panel project.
Okay.
It's 100% funded by the province for the school, and we're working on amending our joint use actually right now to make sure that it's really clear that the maintenance and upkeep of the solar panels are their responsibility. It's supposed to be built into their school programs. It's part of their educational platform, and they're doing it to a number of schools throughout the province.
Okay. I guess that's good to know that we didn't have to buy those. And what's that?
It wasn't meant to save money, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and like I've been told as well that like we might have to carry a bit higher insurance due to the solar panels, like fire related. Is that correct?
Our insurance rates shouldn't be affected, but we have adjusted to accommodate that. But it's at the sole expense of the school division.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Cox.
My question is a little different, not necessarily about the planning. What? No. I was approached and asked, safety-wise, and now that I've seen pictures, I kind of do have a bit of a, how does the track per se or the facility itself separate from the school?
So,
Because you just said they're shared washrooms.
we've shared washrooms in the facility. There's some washrooms in the school that are only accessible to the school during the day, and then they become accessible to the public after hours. We have, in the design of the facility, to meet the needs of the school to do lockdowns and things like that, all school parts of the building can be locked down and separated from the public spaces. But the philosophy behind the building was to create a community space and not have division between the school and the community.
So I guess
we've put safety precautions in place if we need them, but the idea is to make it more of a community space.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what, for example, you have somebody that's sitting there walking around watching the girls play volleyball all day. How do you control that?
Well, it would be monitored, both by the school staff, the teachers, administrators, and the town staff that are on site. And those are things you run into with multi-use facilities. It happens in any multi-use facility regardless of if a school is attached, and it's just something you build into your procedures and how you educate your staff on what to look for.
Thank you.
Councillor Bauer.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question about busing. Has the busing and the in and out been already addressed, or is that something that is still in the progress? And then with regards to the George Freeman Road, has the speed limit been set, and will the signs be up prior to the school opening so that people know that this is a functioning school and that we have time to get people on board with following the law?
Yeah. So, to answer your first question, yes, the transportation department at Golden Hills was consulted when the site was designed to ensure that they had adequate drop-off space and loops. And then our engineering firm here, our team here that is building the road is making sure that they have full access with radiuses. In terms of the speed limit on the road, at this time, we're not looking at implementing a school zone, but we're looking at some options. So we haven't really settled on a determination of what the speed limit will be on George Freeman. But the Edgefield Road, that's what it's called, will be a school zone and it will be signed accordingly.
Okay, so when you come off of George Freeman, you'll be going into a school zone, but the George Freeman Road will not be a school zone as of this time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we're working with the school to make sure that they have adequate safety barriers, including fencing along George Freeman.
Okay.
Anything else? That's great. Thank you very much, Tracy. Appreciate that. And now we'll move on to 6.2, Strathmore Motor Products Center and George Freeman School Pathway Connectivity Intersection Design and Traffic Lights. And Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. This wasn't intentional, but it is somewhat serendipitous that, our director of that our director of community services presented on sort of the update on the school today. So I'll just speak very briefly and answer questions about sort of the pathways, intersections, and traffic lights. So the access to the school. Again, try to make it fairly. This is one that we've had a lot of questions about, so I want to get it out into the public, and then we'll talk to comms tomorrow about probably issuing some sort of communique that the papers can pick up and anyone else can. The pathway system, first up, is intended to be sort of fully give good pedestrian access to the school. So you can see here on the map here, the green highlighted areas there are intended to be built over immediately. So coming down George Freeman Trail on the east-west side there, crossing at the controlled intersection at Edgeview there, and then that's your access from the north, and then access from the south comes along the trail on the east side of George Freeman. Already get maced and less confused. The little highlighted portion there, future pedestrian crossing to be developed with the WID canal crossing. So council will recall earlier this year that we had that design build tender for reconstructing that bridge. So part of that design build there is the pathway along the bridge there. So that kind of closes the loop and gets that good access all the way through to north of the canal where it ties into the trail system there. With regards to the intersection, there have been a number of questions there. It is a fully signalized intersection paid for by off-site levies. So the intersection there, and this is a drawing only an engineer could love.
Yeah.
The real intent here is to show, again, coming north and south, you see it's two lanes with the turning lane and the pass-through lane. So you'll have your protected lefts and your decel for your right, and then 2 lanes coming out, left and right for folks coming out of Edgeview and the George Freeman School. This is always nice for buses especially. That way they can inevitably have to swing their tail. These are all full width, so the full 3.7 meter wide roadways, lanes as well. And again, we've tested turning templates on this every which way to make sure buses and that sort of thing can make it through.
It's the only good thing about his map.
Ouch.
This is something only an engineer could love.
I agree.
But it is a very accurate representation of what the design will be. And again, this is another very engineering one, however, it's just intended to show this is a fully signalized intersection with advanced turn lanes. And probably the very best way to make sure that it's very safe for pedestrians to cross is a full intersection with full red lights.
Agreed.
Crosswalks all around.
Yep.
Flashing crosswalk as well?
Your worship, no, this will be sort of a fully, full controlled intersection with a little pedestrian light that comes on. So people will have to come to a complete stop and wait for the red. This is the safest way, and this was always sort of been the intent there, given the speeds and the sensitivity of this intersection, to do a fully controlled intersection. So overall, the intent is to make sure that, because George Freeman is a collector road, it's a commuter road, to make sure that pedestrians are off the road, sort of grade separated for trails coming north and south to access it, and then where they are crossing, that it's a full, full intersection with crosswalks, just to sort of maximize the safety there. That sort of concludes, where we're at with access there.
Thank you. Well, I'm confused on that, but I'll wait there. Maybe that'll get cleared up here. Councillor, did you have something?
I was gonna ask about the traffic signal, but he cleared it up.
Yeah.
Did, okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I have, I don't think I'm confused, but if you're confused, I might be. I think it's good. The only consideration that I don't see here, it's not a part of it, and I'm satisfied with this, and I realize that the other considerations are one that are in the purview of Golden Hills. But one of the concerns that now adds to an existing concern is where we had the temporary crosswalk on Park Lane Drive, where you cross the bridge at the north end of George Freeman, and the kids from both schools, from the Holy Trinity and Sacred Heart Academy, and now George Freeman, I think that there'll be a lot more traffic both ways in that area. It's just a consideration for the future. There'll be more probably internal bus pickups as well on that road, so it's something just to keep an eye on.
Your worship, absolutely, and that's part of the reason that we wanted to get that bridge done and sort of able to be widened there, because if it does come up, the bridge is the toughest thing to deal with, so
Yeah.
it's intended to.
I envision that we'll have kids coming off of that and going west. It'll just add more traffic.
Councillor Montgomery.
I don't recall specifically, but what's that road that runs east-west, just north of George Freeman there?
The one that goes through Aspen Creek.
Just north?
Yeah, that one.
Which one?
Centennial Drive?
Centennial? Is that the one that you mentioned needs like a flashing stop sign?
No, that was the Aspen one.
You're talking about, this Aspen Creek is the
Okay.
The one that's, the school.
Should we consider putting a flashing stop sign at that intersection as well? That's what you're talking about?
It goes, there's actually two,
Yeah.
because Mel talked about the east
The one
side
north one though.
of Aspen Creek, which is Park Lane Drive, and then there's another one on the west side. But it's true, that's exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah,
I think it'll be a consideration.
okay, yeah, because there will be a lot of kids crossing there, obviously, so.
Yeah, with Edgefield and everything right there.
Your worship, absolutely, and that's when I'll give a plug to Mark here. One of the things we really want to do with council is bring a list of sort of the next 5 years worth of priorities for flashing crosswalks. And then council can adjust it
Yeah.
to accommodate, and then that way, it's a nice elegant way to do it. We'll have that list, and then as grants or budgets, obviously, then even grants allow, we can work our way down. So, Mark will be bringing that list of sort of our planned flashing crosswalks. That's what I call them, there are some things.
Yep.
Flashing crosswalks to council in the near future so that everyone can determine that priority list.
Okay, thank you.
So, a couple of areas I just want to clarify, Ryan. So, there's a pathway heading from Centennial to what's the name of the road now? Edgefield Road it's going to be?
Edgeview, Your Worship, Edgeview.
Edgeview Road. And that'll be on the west side. And it'll include access through the bridge or alongside of the bridge on the west side, of course. And that'll go to Edgefield where there's a traffic light. And then you said that there would be another pathway heading north on the east side. Is that from Park Lane?
thank you, Councilor Pearson, from Ranch heading north.
From Marks, for instance?
Yeah, Your Worship, so sort of all the way from Ranch there,
So
heading
from
all
this
the way
Edgeview
north
Drive
to Edgeview.
Yeah.
And then pedestrians would have to cross over to keep heading north
Right.
on George Freeman.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good plan.
Yeah.
Long last.
Yeah.
Excellent.
This is a very important road and a very high-speed one. and
Yes, it is.
A lot of pedestrians.
And that'll take everybody off the road, hopefully.
Yeah.
How come then where you're talking about is brown, not green?
Your Worship, with regards to the brown, that's an existing one. So
Oh,
that's
so there
already
already is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
kind of ends in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it goes on to the bridge, yeah, yeah. So the other question I had, and just help me with the bus traffic heading south on George Freeman Trail, turning left onto the, is that a single lane of traffic, or is there going to be a passing lane there?
Your Worship, so turning left?
Turn,
So turning left out of Edgeview?
no, heading south on George Freeman Trail, turning left into the school.
Okay.
There's two lanes.
South on, okay, oh, Your Worship, perfect. Not terribly clear by this drawing.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's my problem.
There will be a left turn bay there for buses turning left, southbound buses turning left, so there'll be
That arrow
a
right
left
there.
turn bay and then a straight through bay.
So how substantial, I just envision 8 buses lined up there.
Your Worship,
And I may be wrong, I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Your Worship, I actually, off the top of my head, I don't know what that sort of stacking distance is. Typically it'd be 125 meters, but
Yeah.
I don't know. We can send council around the full
Wait.
intersection treatment there. Kind of got chopped off here.
So that's my only concern is it's a busy road, and especially in the morning time, you can get a lot of traffic on there, and I don't want to just see vehicles lined up to Centennial Drive, that's all.
I know-
Which I don't think would happen, but,
Your Worship, I know that Golden Hills has looked at this extensively, and they're trying, and they're very good at timing their buses, and so
Yeah.
Yeah.
sending them so that doesn't happen, and I know that's been a major
Sounds
consideration.
encouraging.
Yeah.
And
Thank
it's
you.
also fully lighted, because it's the
yeah,
lights.
but that's not necessarily a good thing, because now they have red lights to stop at, so.
Have everybody coming from Wheeland,
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine there'll be an advanced green for the bus traffic too in the morning and at night. Okay, I'm good, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ryan, I just have a quick question. Sometimes on George Freeman Road, we have trouble with the lights on Highway 1 and the first light going into Ranch not being timed. Do we have authority to try and time those lights? Because I understand that the one on the Trans-Canada is not our jurisdiction, but the one in Ranch is that correct?
Your Worship, that would be correct. So the one on the Trans-Canada is ATS. The one further up is the town's.
And so just once that gets going, will we look at timing those lights as well?
Your Worship, with regards to that, the town can certainly, I suspect, and I'm maybe reaching it here, I suspect this light will be difficult to time because there will be a lot of pedestrians pushing that button.
Yeah.
Just the nature of the kids and everything. It will probably be, we'll probably talk to Golden Hills about specifically extending that flashing green during certain hours. But I don't know that there's an intent to try to fully time that network yet. That may be something staff can look into going forward. And I'll follow up with town infrastructure staff on that, if we sort of have an overall agreement with the province on light timing. I know those are challenging to deal with, but it's one that the town can look at certainly.
So what you're saying is the light at the school, it will only turn red when somebody is crossing?
Your Worship, no, it will be sort of a cycled light. However,
It will be a
pedestrians
cycled
can
light.
Play with the cycle when they push their button.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and we will be, Your Worship, we will be presenting this or putting this out in a form that people can read.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll move on to Volunteer Income Tax Program. Good evening. How are you?
So I'm just here to provide an update for the volunteer income tax program.
Thank you, Linda.
And the volunteer income tax program is a partnership with Canada Revenue. where our office provides income tax services for low income or modest income people, or people that don't have the capacity or ability to be able to complete their income taxes themselves. And one of the things that we focus on with the income tax program is it's just not completing their taxes, but we're ensuring that everybody that comes to our door that we have access to, that they are able to access any government financial assistance that are available to them. And if they are not accessing those financial supports, we ensure that we do a follow-up appointment with them and bring them in and make sure that they have access to all the financial supports that are available to them. If they aren't eligible for financial supports, we assist them in finding other supports in the community or outside of the community so they can be more successful. So in 2017, staff completed about 160 income taxes, and out of those, 111 were seniors and 49 were low income or no income clients. So we had about 10 to about 12 people that came in that said they have no income at all, and so we were able to assist them for the next steps, except for one of them that refused assistance, to be able to get them on either income support, AISH, or other benefits that they may be eligible for, because maybe they're a couple and their spouse's income is too high for them to be eligible for government assistance, but we're able to find other types of assistance for them. And so as you can see, attached, there's a vast variety of income that is able to stay in our community because of how we do the program. And then just in addition to ensuring that people are getting just not getting their income tax done, but they're getting other services to them. This year we referred 40% of our senior clients to the senior benefits special needs clients. Because when they came in and our staff went through an assessment with them with their income tax, we found out that they didn't know or didn't understand that they were eligible perhaps for their for Alberta senior benefits, for example, for their prescription rebate, right? And so there's a program if you're in Alberta senior benefits that you can get reimbursed. So we had quite a few people that didn't know that. Or we had quite a few people that came in and they didn't know that they may be eligible for assistance with some medical things like diabetes, for example, or a specialized bed in their house, and those kind of things. So we were able to assist them and process them through that in addition to filing their income tax for them. And so it's really also important to notice if you're on any type of government assistance, even if you're senior on CPP or GIS, if your income tax isn't completed as of July 1st, sometimes your benefits can be cut off. And so it's really important to note that and to get the information out, and that's one thing that we're finding is people aren't aware of that, and so we're able to share that information a little bit more. And so besides just completing the income taxes, I just wanted to highlight some of the outcomes that we had, and just a little bit more awareness that there's a lot of people in our community that are not able to complete their income taxes for one reason or another, and they fall into the financial bracket that the federal government provides us to be able to provide that support. But I think it's also important to mention, if you come to our office, you do not fit that financial, because we sign up with the government, so we have to kind of do their rules, right? So you come in and you're over that threshold. We also make sure that you're still getting all the supports, and we make sure you refer you to where somebody can better help you. So a really good example of that is if your spouse passed away in 2017, you're not able to complete your spouse's taxes. You don't know why. It's just the way that the volunteer income tax program is set up. Because we're not accountants, that's why, right? And so then we're able to work with the spouse to ensure that the taxes are done. And then this is a good example. We would also sit down with that person. 9 times out of 10, they're seniors. and we would sit down with them and make sure that they have all the survival benefits that they're eligible for. And I would say this year we found about 7 times out of 10 that was a piece that was missing, that they weren't aware. Even though maybe they were most likely getting the information from the funeral home, they just weren't aware that they can have access to that. And so with that, residents are better able to keep up with their financial commitments, and I talked a little bit about that. And in addition, we talked about different services that we're able to refer people to, so just not the finances, but the food bank, mental health, addiction recovery. We noticed this year that there was an increase of people coming in with adults coming in that had adult children with disability, but they weren't on age.
Yeah.
We knew perhaps that they could be eligible, so we assisted them with that. We assisted them with that process, and a majority of the people have no idea that their adult child would be eligible for government assistance because that adult child is living at home with them. And so we're just able to share that information and assist them. And so that increased the connectedness with the community, and then word of mouth got out, and I went and told my friend, who told their friend, and we started getting an increase in phone calls and people coming in. And one of the highlights that we want to share with you too is the staff became more aware and confident in the increased services we're providing, and so there was some more training that came out of that, and so we're able to continue each time increasing the service delivery a little bit in the community. And so because it is a volunteer program, we've never had a volunteer before. Our goal is for next year when we do the taxes to have a volunteer. We already have a couple of people interested, so we're going to go through the process and see if they would be the right fit for the program, and start to build it upon that to take the load off the staff a little bit. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wow. I'm really amazed. That's fantastic work. Councillor Montgomery, I think you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Linda, for doing this report. So am I understanding this correctly, that the people of Strathmore, these 160 individuals, recovered $2.7 million through you guys because of this?
That's right. So if they did not do their taxes, they wouldn't get their government assistance, federal and provincial, and so we calculated based on that what that would be, and that's correct. That's what was calculated to.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's worth highlighting that it is a substantial amount of money that is brought into the town by this program. And my other question just had to do with so I guess you've kind of answered it, but so does that 30 minutes per individual, does that include doing the actual tax return, or is that just kind of a consultation with the person?
It includes doing the tax return because 90% of the taxes are simple taxes that we can complete. The 10% that are complex taxes are people coming in that have 5 years of taxes that need to be done. People coming in and they don't have all their information with them, or they're new Canadians. The new Canadians are very challenging to be able to get the proper information for them, because we need to know when they entered the country and that sort of thing to fill the taxes out. So that's kind of the difference with that.
Okay. Thank you for answering the question, and good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I really appreciate this. I think it's one of the most valuable programs I've seen come forward in the time I've been here. And Councillor Cox and I sit on the Wheatland Housing Management Body, and we share similar clientele to what you're referring to. And one of the things that I was wondering would be if there was some way in the 2019 budget, if it was necessary to expend a small amount to actually create modules, education modules, so that as well as people coming to your office, that maybe you'd have the capacity to go out, to our seniors' residences, our seniors' lodges, to be able to educate staff and clientele and families in those environments as well. Recognize that it's not possible under the current funding model, but that it's something that's so valuable at the front end for the client, but also has a residual benefit. And I also see it, in places like Bridging the Gap and ParentLink as well. I just think it's extraordinary, and when there is, when the federal government provides free training for income tax for people who are doing this kind of volunteer programming, it's probably something for consideration. I don't know if you feel that your current environment could handle that with a little extra support, I don't know, but it's certainly something I'd be interested in.
So, thank you, yeah, so one of the things we're looking at when we're doing the evaluation is getting feedback like that, and getting feedback from the other service providers, because we work very closely with all the service providers. They're aware of the program we offer, and in fact, one of the outcomes from that is, okay, I can't remember what it's called right now, but we did get a call from one of the seniors lodges for a couple of people that are having some challenges financially, because they knew that we're doing the income tax program. They asked if we were able to come and assist them in that, and so that's one of the outreach kind of things that we're doing into the community, and we'd be happy to.
And when I heard that, well, actually recommended you, and then when I heard that you were doing that, one of the things that staff commented on was just what they didn't know. It wasn't a part of their book of business, because they're used to delivering human services based on client needs within the operation itself, and finances specifically didn't enter into it. It's something that's always been very private, often even between parents and their children. So it is just a really, really important component that you're bringing to the table. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you somewhat answered part of my question in that last question. But I want to know what more we can do to get the word out. I mean, 160 people, and you've done that kind of benefit. How do we get that to 200 so we can double that?
Definitely. So that's something we're looking at. We haven't been able to sit down and do our debrief and evaluation with the staff that offer the program. So we're looking at different ways. With the help of communications at the town, they were able to help us put something together. We were asking people where they found the information out to come in, and so it was with the ads that we were able to continuously run in the paper, so different promotions like that. And I think one of the other things too is reaching out to some of the service organizations that we haven't been able to reach out to, and build those relationships in a different way, like the housing board and the seniors, right? And however, one of the things we have to be cautious of is capacity, right? And so what that looks like, and so we'd like to be able to definitely build it, because we know with the statistics that we see in this community, the percentage that should be accessing the program, we know aren't accessing the program. And then in addition to that, the people that are accessing the program that aren't accessing the other financial programs, it's just going to grow. It's just going to grow too. So we're looking at what we can do to increase that and share that information. Thank you.
That's all the questions we have. Thank you very much, Linda. That was really appreciated. It's a great report. Councillor Peterson.
I move to accept the report with, for info.
We can't make a motion.
Oh, we can't?
But thank you. Thanks for trying. Obviously, it's without, I don't have to say this, but I'm sure a council will be spreading the word on this itself, because it's something that really should be out there. We'll move on to 6.4, council remuneration. Is that, oh. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report, the request for a decision by council, is to provide a mechanism on a go-forward basis to deal with council remuneration. As you are aware, legislation has been passed by the Canadian government to remove the provision that provided for 1/3 of the pay in the form of a non-taxable allowance. Because of this change, members of council will receive less net take-home pay. An estimate of the tax effect ranges from $2,400 at a marginal tax rate of 25% to approximately $3,500 at a tax rate of $3,600, and for the mayor, it would be higher than that because of the higher pay. Currently, council members receive an annual salary of $27,881, and the mayor $51,077. Over the last 4 years, very modest adjustments have been made to the salaries, going back each year 1%, 2%, 3.2%, and 3.5% over the current and past 3 years.
If I could just interrupt you, and those are COLA increases, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
That is COLA only.
Cost of living allowance. For anyone who doesn't know.
Yes, it was
Thank you.
cost of living allowance. The average annual salary of the councillors in the surrounding communities are listed in the report and range from $39,000 to $27,223. If I can give you an update, within the report, the town of Cochrane, I had quoted 2016 pay, and that's the information I had at that time. I today was able to determine that the town of Cochrane for 2017, the average annual salary for councillor was $28,627. And for the town of High River, $27,223. So a small adjustment for Cochrane and a little larger one for High River. And then the pay, just further down on that page, for the mayor for town of Cochrane, $84,671 for 2017, and the town of High River, $52,592.
And if I could just, I'm sorry, if I could interrupt you one more time, Mel.
Yes.
And these numbers do not include added revenues such as per diems, is that correct?
These numbers would be salaries, any per diems, but not including benefits.
Thank you.
So salaries, per diems, and just the gross pay type of thing, and then any benefits would be over and above these numbers. Other issues are listed.
I think we just have another question here, Mel, on that
Yes.
topic. Councillor.
Well, just
Wait,
like I when I looked at Wheatland County, for instance, like I know that they take per diems and their base salary is what is stated here. So I just not sure that that was entirely accurate.
Well, these numbers are right off the audited financial statement page. And they're prepared based on the same information consistently by the auditors. Now, in the case of Wheatland County, they pay a large amount for benefits and mileage. My understanding is that council, because of the distances that some members of council travel in the county, their benefits can almost match the pay.
Yeah, but he said that
Did it-
Per diems are included in this.
The per diems are included in the pay. And the benefits or mileage is in the, an additional amount.
The tax-free stuff is not, like mileage, benefits, those kind of
Yeah,
things.
they are not, that is not included in these numbers.
Thank you.
Other issues that are listed and could be reviewed, such as benefits, expense reimbursement, support tools for council, methodology used to establish future adjustments, association and conference attendance, professional development, and the like. Those are all other issues that could be included and considered in this arena. So the guiding principles that we should be aware of, transparency and stewardship are critical components to having acceptable public perception. Salary should not be a barrier to serving on council. There's a need to attract those who are competent and can understand the complexities of municipal government. Reasonable out-of-pocket expenses while conducting town business should be eligible for reimbursement. And a desire to simplify council remuneration process and to adopt best practices. So I've included in with this report information from the 2017 AMSC Wage and Compensation Survey prepared by Bannister Research and Consulting, and those are the colored graphs. I've also included an interesting report that was prepared for the City of St. Albert Council on the council remuneration and expense reimbursement. I understand that the cost of this report was significant and in the area of $60,000. The report is about 50-some pages long, and so it's about $1,000 a page. Quite significant.
Yeah.
That concludes my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mel. Questions, Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Mel. The 2000, or the impact of the new tax law, is that in the 2018 year? Do we have a date on implementation for that?
It becomes effective January 1, 2019.
2019. Thanks so much. Sorry, missed that.
Thank you, and I assume that this will be coming back at a future council meeting for a decision as to what we as council wish to do with this issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, will this be at the next council meeting or something?
James, do you have an idea when this will be coming, when this is destined to come back?
Well, through the chair, it is at council or the committee's discretion to refer it further. At this point, it was our intention, based on what council requested, just that we staff provide the information. We certainly, in discussing with the mayor, there is merit to considering some of the options in there, but we wanted to give you sufficient time to do that. So we are certainly open to whatever you'd like to do. And certainly, we'd certainly like to discuss, if you wish, some of the recommendations further, particularly if you wanted to go externally, to get external consulting.
So like, we'd have to make a motion to pick one of those options?
You don't have to, no, you're in committee,
Can't make a motion.
so you can.
Well,
Tonight.
I know,
Not
but that's,
So-
so, that's what I'm saying, we would have to wait to make one of those decisions?
You would have to, yes, you would have to either rise and report, make a motion, refer it to either council or refer it for further deliberation. So we'd be pleased to support you any way you'd like us to continue. Thank you.
Well, that answered the the issue or not, but
So I guess
do we, if we want this brought to the next council meeting, that would have to be a motion? To bring it to the next council meeting?
You certainly could,
Is that by motion?
if you wish. Yes.
Thank you.
You've read the report, it's correct, Council.
We'll just perhaps do that after we come out of committee of the whole, because there's going to be a couple of motions. I understand. If that works.
Are you done with Mel?
Thanks,
I sure am. Thank you. Thanks, Mel.
Not a question,
Oh,
more a comment
You're
anyway.
too close. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I still think that we should debate making the mayors even like, you know, the 4 out of 5 day position and even going into it with a deputy mayor. Is that?
Well,
I think that we could bring it all together, can we not?
I think there's room there in some of those recommendations to go down that road. And perhaps that can be part of the discussion when and if it
I really
comes
think
back
it
to us.
should be.
Well, do you guys all think like option B is probably the best one?
Well, I think prior to doing that, I think we should wait till it comes back to us for a decision. And I'm hoping there'll be a motion at the, when we come out of committee of the whole to have this brought back at the next council meeting. We can have an open discussion as to which direction we're heading.
Okay.
Would that work? Thank you. 6.5 Wheatland Crisis Society Cream Can. See no one standing up.
Doug. He says.
Oh, good evening, Doug. Thank you. Floor is yours.
So we have the Wheatland Crisis Society Cream Can in our building. We took it to a weekend event. We did not have a lot of success with it there. But we are going to be doing a couple fundraisers within town office. We are offering a raffle for theater tickets that have been donated to us for Jubilation Theater. And we're also going to be raffling off a day off work.
Doug, where do we sign up?
And we're hoping that council will have some ideas as to how we could raise further money to fill the can with. And with that, I'm prepared to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bauer.
I have an idea, however, it involves our mayor and an Elvis suit.
We all have a,
And,
and it shall not be told that it was my,
okay, and, singing, and so I would like to, just suggest that maybe we look at having our mayor, if he is willing and able, perhaps if enough money is raised, if he would dance for us or do a little Elvis impersonation. He does yeah.
Oh. Wow.
Is this how the mayor's,
Wow.
the mayor's out of town and the deputy mayor's filling in?
Man, oh man.
What happens when you take
Teach
time
him?
off?
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering, Councillor Bauer, if you'd be willing to represent council on that, on this project. With all our support, I think we would all support.
do a comms posting.
Thank you very much.
But I think we should have somebody, a point person on this. Are you?
I would love to.
Thank you. So that'll be your next contact through council, and we also want to get involved. I think I personally would like to get involved in any of the raffles that are going on as well. So who would we be contacting
You
for
can buy
that?
tickets in town office, communications.
Communications, comms. Thank you very much. Any other questions from?
I just have
Councillor
another
Peterson?
idea for council, and that is that, particularly the men I find whine a lot about having to wear a shirt and tie for council. And so I was thinking that if we wanted to come casual, it would cost you money. It would cost you $20 if you wanted to come,
Without a shirt.
yeah, casual.
Councillor Montgomery.
Without a shirt, Jason.
Or
Together.
how about every time the women don't wear sleeves, they have to pay money?
Well, it would be,
Last meeting,
casual.
all of you had no sleeves at all.
Oh, my goodness, only you would notice that.
Yeah, did you notice
I think we need to come up with a dress code analogy, like an anti-dress code, and pay money. And I would be happy for him to take control of that.
I'll wear a tie and a t-shirt, that's fine.
Okay,
I look forward to your emails
we're-
with your ideas.
this is going downhill fast. Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate that. Let's raise some money. It's a good cause, by the way. I think we're forgetting this. All funds here are going to the Crisis Society. Yeah, that's an amazing facility in our. We're very fortunate as a municipality to have that facility. So I really encourage anyone watching this, if you're coming into the town office, if I understand this correctly, Doug, it'll be sitting out in the lobby, Deborah, and anybody's welcome to throw some loose change or some loose 20s, whatever, into the can. And we only have that until the end of June. So that's really important too. We only have 17 days to go, so we gotta move on that. Thank you.
The amount to beat is $2,600.
Yeah, okay, and the amount to beat is $2,600. We're gonna try to surpass that. Thank you. And lastly, we have 6/6, which is August council meetings. Who'll be speaking on that? James?
I'll speak on that.
Would you, I'd be pleased if you'd speak on behalf of Jennifer.
Well, so administration is requesting that council cancel all of the council meetings in August 2018. Council has authority under their procedural bylaw, number 16-18, to cancel council meetings if notice to the public was provided. And James has asked us that we consider this report.
May I speak through the chair?
I'm not sure. Ask it. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Councilor Montgomery, may I speak through the chair to the? Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, Constable Montgomery.
Wow.
My apologies, sincerely. No, we just wanted to, last year, council didn't have any meetings in August, and it seemed to work. There's many other cities that have a similar thing, because it gives the organization and council a break between meetings, because I know councilors attend an awful lot of meetings, not just including these meetings, but I'm not sure how the public know, but the councilors attend a tremendous amount of meetings outside of these regular meetings as well. And so we were just proposing to have a bit of a break so people can get away. It does work. A lot of other cities do it, and we would just propose that we put this forward for council consideration. Thank you.
Any questions on that? I guess my only question is, and I each year we do this, and I have no problem with it, but there's two issues that I want to make sure. One, that we don't anticipate anything coming up in August that is going to require attendance, and two, with an understanding from council that if anything does come up, that we'll have to take off our shorts and put on our long pants and come in.
Yes, and we've talked to the leadership team to ensure that, to make the effort that we don't have things, anything that needs to get dealt with will get dealt with in the next meetings, the next 4 meetings, rather than try and wait till the end. And so we want to help council to keep the agenda down, so.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
We hear you loud and clear, James.
Do you want to move to?
You need a break from this.
Motion to rise and report?
Yes.
I would move to come out of committee of the whole, Your Worship.
Thank you. All in favor? That motion is passed. So we have two, I'm not sure if we have 2 or 3. We have 9.1 here, which is a new business welcoming policy. Was that set for tonight? Is that an addition to the agenda?
That was requested. Do you wish to refer that, or do you wish to?
Sure, let's refer that, because I don't know what it is. I can't remember what it is, and it's not on the,
Welcoming,
and it's not on
welcoming
the
new
agenda.
business, welcoming new
That's
business.
like
And
the
it's-
chamber wanted access to like new businesses.
Oh, yes, thank you, yes. But it's,
It's
it-
misplaced.
it
in the
wasn't
agenda.
placed on the agenda,
Yeah,
so
it's
let's
mis- it's
just
misplaced.
move that on to next week if we could, James?
To your council?
Do you want me to make the motions, your
Yes,
worship? To
please.
rise and report?
Please.
Do I need to move to rise and report?
Yeah, we're out of the,
Right, so, your worship, I would move that we take item 8.3 on the agenda regarding welcoming new businesses and refer it to the next meeting.
9.1.
9.1, was it? Sorry.
you. And we also have, need a motion
We have
in
to
regards to
motion.
council
We
remuneration.
can vote on that one, and then I'll make the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry, all in favor?
And then,
didn't ask for a second.
Then, your worship, I would move to accept the FCSS report for information.
All in favor?
And finally, I would move to bring the item of council remuneration. Do you want on the last meeting in June or the first meeting in July?
I think the last meeting in June, myself.
To refer
I
it
don't see
to
what-
next Wednesday?
All we're doing is making a decision as to what direction we want to go.
That's
So I think
correct.
the sooner we do that, the better.
Yeah, items for discussion are listed in the information report that was presented by the Director of Finance.
Okay, any questions on that? Any comment? All in favor? And lastly?
I move that council cancel the August 1st, 2018 regular council meeting and August 8th, 2018 committee of the whole meeting and August 15th, 2018 meeting.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. All in favor? We are done.